Hi, I'm Doug Draper with Acme Distribution and the Denver Transportation Club, and I'm pleased to present our series, Supply Chain and Logistics, the Storytellers. The series is brought to you by CAP Logistics. CAP Logistics are experts offering you customized transportation solutions for every need. So please visit caplogistics.com. So today's topic is a little bit unique. We're going to call it rapid fire. And if there was one person in the industry that I knew would be a perfect fit for this, is our guest today, Henri Duhot. Henri, thanks for coming.
Appreciate being here.
Good deal. Henri's with H.D. Duhot and Associates. He does a little bit of consulting. But before we get into rapid fire, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in Denver since 1979, but was in transportation when I moved out here. I went to Middle Tennessee State and started with Roadway a long time ago.
Yeah.
But came out here and got involved both in domestic and international transportation, and then been doing some guest lecturing for the last 20 years, I guess you might say, and worked for a lot of the major corporations. Been traveling literally all over the world, probably for about a third of my life.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
So learned a ton there, and I think I've been on both sides of the table, which gives me a real advantage, I think, on being both a transportation provider and being on the supply chain side with various corporations. So, yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to do a little bit different format today. Instead of having one topic that we get in depth with, we're going to get Henri's feedback on a handful of topics. Hence the term rapid fire. So the first topic we're going to talk about is domestic trucking, the capacity issues, and the driver shortage that we've talked a lot about. So Henri, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's kind of ironic right now where if you listen to radio shows, especially sports radio shows, they're advertising. Safeway's got big advertising for their distribution center right here, and the big advantage is staying at home. And I think the picture of driving a truck with the driver shortage is you're going to be far away on the road forever and never get to see your family and everything. And now they're advertising that, no, that's not the case. You can do 8-10 hours and make good money, have good benefits and everything. There's a lot of oil field companies out there advertising the same way. There's definitely I think a mystique about being an over-the-road trucker, but you can be a transportation provider as a driver, or even develop your own firm as a trucking company. And I think that's not being put out there. They're saying either get a local job and you won't make as much money as you do on the road and own your own truck and everything. But to me, it's a good start to maybe start your own company. It's a good start to learn the business, as you might say. But it gives you the opportunity to choose how you want to go in your life if transportation and logistics is what you want to do.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, for sure. If you can stay home and see your family every night, getting into the industry can be an easy point. So that's good stuff. Flipping over, let's talk about e-commerce. Specifically what I would call the final mile, or potentially the final 50 feet. People's buying habits are changing rapidly, the Amazon effect. What's your take on the e-commerce piece?
In some ways, I think it's great from a standpoint that I was snowmobiling this week, and the lady that was driving our transportation vehicle to the location that we were getting onto the snowmobiles on, she lives way up in the mountains in Colorado, and her big thing she talked about the whole time was Amazon Prime and how it saved her life and everything. She makes a once weekly trip to Costco and then has to go to Glenwood Springs to get some of the fresh produce and everything that she needs. The e-commerce piece, essentially, it's good in a lot of ways. It has hurt my family personally. My father-in-law owned a bookstore at a university town, and they're basically lost all their business just from the standpoint of the big retailers the e-commerce retailers coming in and taking that business away. But I think if we do have a solution to kind of the way Amazon's going, which I think Amazon's partially subsidized by the federal government because of the low rates they're getting with the Postal Service. I think from the standpoint of doing that is who's going to share these costs going forward to get that final mile done. Yeah. I think we've got a pretty good idea on visibility on where everything's at, but when you're signing up to some of these programs in the e-commerce suite, you're also looking at possibly a scenario to where I think you could probably combine, kind of almost like in your own mini collective or association, of having your deliveries come from multiple providers into one facility or one place, or go pick it up at one place. That might be something that might help that final mile, that last 50 cents of the package and everything. So what I might mean by that is you could have an Amazon shipment, you could have a Macy's shipment, you could have all these shipments come with one provider, rather than if you're ordering everything, let's say from Amazon Prime, you could choose who you wanted to order it from, but have it go to a final mile staging area to that provider that's providing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that might help on not only reducing costs, but getting a lot better visibility and scheduling times. I know just this last Christmas, we had packages coming in, nobody be at home, and you have no idea when it was delivered or anything like that. It could have been sitting there for days. We went around the neighborhood and took a lot of our neighbors' packages, brought them to our house, and just left them a note and said, hey, it's at our house, because we knew they were working and it might be valuable and all this other stuff. So that's kind of some of the things we tried to do.
Yeah, I think that's perfect on that final mile. It's the mailbox clusters,
exactly
if you will,
right. Exactly
have
right.
the same type of thing. It's good. Something's going to happen, because people cannot afford to deliver a jungle gym to Evergreen, Colorado for $45. Doesn't
exactly
exist.
right. Yeah.
Cool. Let's shift to the tariff war. I know you have a lot of experience in this. So what's your general thought? I mean, every other day there's some new tariff and thing we're slapping on different countries. What's your general take there?
Well, the thing about it is most major countries and most major corporations have figured out ways to get around these tariffs. I mean, initially, when the tariff changes were mentioned a couple of years back, it was like, well, let's get our war rooms put together and figure out what we can do, what we'll need to do. You've got the UK Brexit situation. You've got essentially China doing kind of a trade war with us right now. But overall, people are going to get around how they can, get by tariffs. I mean, there's a great story I heard on the radio just the other day about how the lobsters coming out of the Boston area, the market is way down into China, but it's great into Canada. And they're thinking, why did this happen?
Yeah.
Well, it happened because they can send it into Canada, import it from there. Canada has no tariff problems with China right now, and so they're just shipping them out of Toronto instead of out of Boston directly, and that's what happened to change that model. I look at having both imported and exported on the tariff wars. If we ship into China right now, electronics is an example, there's a 31% pop on anything that was made in the U.S. If you go into India, it's 47%. Even if it's shipped from the U.S. and it was made somewhere else, there's a huge amount of disparity in what we bring in products for, usually 5 to 10%. Including the the harbor fees and everything like that, to where we ship overseas. In Brazil, if you ship electronics into there, it's right at 165%. Into Europe, it's 20% minimum, just on the VAT taxes, not counting the duties.
Yeah.
So I think from the tariff wars that we've got going on right now, the average Joe doesn't understand the impact of what we bring in products into this country for. It's a lot less than what we're sending out our goods and services into these other countries. And I think what we're trying to do is level the playing field so that everybody can ship and import and export to specific countries to make them equal to what we're doing. I mean, if we ship eggs into Canada right now, 200% duties. We can't even import lumber from Canada. I mean, we can't even export lumber into Canada because of it's a restricted product, right? There's a lot of things in the books that people don't understand as they're sending products in and out of the world.
So you're saying it's just an awareness that, hey, that we've had it good for so long with reduced tariffs?
Well, other countries have had it a lot better than we have. We have essentially been a place that as a consumer nation, right? And we've lost our manufacturing process. They've been manufacturing, yet they like our whiskey in Europe, for example, and now they've got higher tariffs on it because we created these wars. Well, they had a 20% markup going into the EU on it anyway. And so what are we saying here? Reduce your taxes on products. We're not taxing you anywhere near as much as it was when we ship whiskey in from, or wines in from Europe, that we're paying a lot more for to export our products into, you know.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any legal repercussions of people trying to work around the system? You gave your example of the lobsters. I mean, is that legal?
Well, as an example, it's totally legal the way they're doing it, right? The thing is if we, I'll give you an example here. If we bring in something into the U.S., right now, just let's say from China, right, we've got a harbor maintenance fee that we have to pay, right? And what's really, how can I say this? What's really interesting about that is if you bring in products from China, you can run them through Newfoundland, I mean, not Newfoundland, but Prince Edward Island, and run it by rail into Chicago. Well, you can bring it through the port of Chicago. There's no harbor maintenance fee there. So if you look at the big guys, the Walmarts and the Amazons, they're using that port to avoid that harbor maintenance fee and put it into their distribution network in Chicago. So from an ocean standpoint, you can bring it into the West Coast or into Seattle or anywhere there, and you'll still have a harbor maintenance fee, but you can eliminate that harbor maintenance fee if you bring it in through Port of Chicago. Yeah. So it's getting around those things that make it different. You can bring in products, let's say, into Mexico as an example, put them in the maquiladora status, manufacture them there, assemble them there, the whole works, and get by with a NAFTA, no duties and taxes. But if you were to ship it into here, you can do the foreign trade zones, right? Reduce some of that exposure, or you could bring it into Canada, assemble it there. But people are gonna do the cheapest way to do it. I mean, if we look at the tariff wars, you know, we're bringing in stuff from China, and everybody says, oh, China's so cheap to build, but actually the burden labor rate for Mexico is the same as it is in China. Matter of fact, it's less right now. So you can manufacture in Mexico, and not have that 30 days extra of your inventory carrying costs or more just by building it in China and stuff. That's why Mexico's kind of going crazy as far as, you know, manufacturing and building and everything. Yeah,
right? Sourcing strategies and points of entry to get around some of the extra tariffs.
Exactly right.
Totally get it. All right, we're just checking off the list here, my friend. Industry consolidation. I'm talking specifically about, we talked about carriers. You've been on both sides, the carrier side, the service provider, and the user of services. The carriers, do you think the big guys are going to start acquiring some of the smaller guys? Do you think that's going to be more stable, or what's your take in 2019 for acquisitions?
I kind of look at it like you've got the big pharma, you've got the big major corporations in the U.S. doing the same thing. I think it's going to happen, but I think major corporations in the U.S. and Amazon is going to maybe make a big purchase. Who that is, I don't know. They already have their own freight forwarding company. They already have their own distribution network now, but they need capacity.
Yeah, you're talking Amazon.
Yeah, and they need capacity. I look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett with Berkshire Hathaway, and they already own the rail lines, right? Why wouldn't they get into the trucking business or a freight forwarding business, which I'm sure they probably already have, but they're owning the whole supply chain. If you look at who they have bought just from home builders, they own Johns Manville here in town, they own Oakwood Homes here in town, so they're owning everything involved in that whole supply chain of building a home. Why not have that whole supply chain distribution network to back it up, not only from the rail, but even some of their wood products groups have their own trucking companies and importing companies as well. So I think not only are the big transportation companies going to be acquiring different assets as far as maybe getting into freight forwarding or whatever, but I think major corporations are going to have to sustain their own distribution and supply chain network. And we just went over it, driver shortage. You know, you can bring somebody on, if you're a Berkshire Hathaway, a Warren Buffett, or a Amazon, give them better benefits than maybe they have with their trucking company that they own right now, right?
Yeah. So do you think that there would be VC money? You got let's say FedEx or Amazon buying more trucking companies, but do you think that there's people that just have money to invest that have nothing to do with transportation that's going to infuse? Maybe
if they
that's
can
a little
make,
bit like the Warren Buffett.
Yeah, if they can make 20% margins in the transportation industry, they'll jump all over it. But if you look at the VC model, they want to make 20% because that's what they give back to their investors, and then they sell off all the assets, and that's the game that they play, right? And then they sell that company off at a inflated price from when they bought it. That's kind of how that works. So if a transportation company is making that 20% margin, they're going to look at them for sure. And they're going to figure out how they're doing it, then maybe look at buying another company and put it into that same model and everything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think some of that still exists. It has been happening a little bit. I know there's a few large freight forwarders that's transpired with. So
sure, XPO and them.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about supply chain security. That's been a big one. It's always been focused on the physical product, and but now it's almost cybersecurity, and with the technology and the advancements that are going out there with folks being able to intercept things we've exampled with Target and the breaches. That's the word I'm looking for. So what are your thoughts on the security aspect of the logistics and supply chain?
Well, from my standpoint, there was a great article in the Denver Post this week about retail theft is the number 2 crime, I believe it is, in the country today. And that is, how can I say it, an attack area where it's easy to steal, easy to sell, right? And if we kind of look at our supply chain security, and if you base it on value, you don't see, people stealing trucks full of flour. They steal trucks full of electronics. They steal trucks full or any kind of vehicle full of diamonds, furs, whatever the higher value product is. That's one area to look at is if you're in that security business and you're monitoring as best as you know how, probably think in the both the cyber world and the actual physical world of how are you going to stop and prevent these people from stealing your high value assets. The bottom level assets aren't going to be stolen as much as the high value ones, right? So when you're looking at, as an example, our marijuana industry we have here, I get to talk to the guy that's ahead of it and was telling him, just from the standpoint of your security, because they're growing all over the place, and they have these vans bringing tons of marijuana into to companies and distribution centers, you've got to have an RFID tag on pretty much every plant or every bag or whatever that's going in there, and be able to geo-place that bag while it's not only in transit, in the facility, the whole works. We have all the technology. I think it's getting people to work together to understand the collaboration that they need to have to keep from having, if you've got an RFID tag and it goes into a pawn shop on a high value product, that should set off an alarm that this is a hot product. And that's, I think where we're weak is that in that final mile, on the retail side of stolen goods or on the wholesale side of stolen goods, they're not in tune with the people that are actually dealing the stuff, right? And that's one problem that we have as far as the visibility of the product getting to the end user who is obviously buying something very cheap, right?
And do you think that technology is just a deterrent for the would-be thief? You see all those doorbells and there's lots of commercials about somebody's going to come up and steal a package, and all of a sudden they know they're being videotaped. So you're saying the fact that I could steal this item, but it's going to follow me wherever. If I try to sell it, people will know where it is. Is that kind of...
So if you go into a pawn shop and everything on that pawn shop says, we are RFID tagged or something to the equivalent of that effect, we know where all our products came from. That thief that's bringing that in there is going to go, uh-oh, I better not bring this thing in because it might have a tag on it, right? Or it might be something I don't want to sell, right? But you're still going to have the criminal element in there anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about the security piece of it. So one thing we talked about was government and the tariffs and things of that nature. You brought up a good topic just the other day when we were chit-chatting about kind of the U.S. government muscle and how they're using to control different lanes in smaller countries. Elaborate a little bit more on that one.
If we look at the global picture, the global map, there's hot spots all over the area. I mean, you've got in Somalia, you've got pirates attacking ships, which our government is monitoring a lot of that and patrolling those areas to keep those lanes open. Iran's the same way. You've got Russia interfering with crap. They were in Venezuela 2 weeks ago, I think, just with one of their big destroyers. They're in some of the areas of Finland, up in the Baltics, that type of stuff. You've got China. You know, they put a complete air base, dug it up out of the ocean. They're also interfering with the Taiwan people and everything. So they're trying to control specific lanes, straits in Malaysia, the Malacca Straits and everything. Those are all areas that we're in, the U.S. government, the British are in, just trying to keep those areas open for free commerce and trade. When you look at just our border right now, you've got counterfeit stuff coming in, you know, from Mexico. I'm sure there's counterfeit stuff coming in from Canada, but it never, you know, they've got good security and everything, but it never gets publicized as much as what Mexico has.
So you're saying using the U.S. might and muscle to keep those lanes open? Or
already doing it. What I'm saying is we need to have help from some of the other nations, like Britain does a great job of it and stuff, but some of the people that are wanting to I guess say come help us and everything. Well, we need your help too. If they can help work with us and provide, you know, the areas that they know are tough. Because I mean, let's face it, we've got enough global satellites out there. We've got enough global infrastructure from a governmental standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and everything. Let's kind of all work together to make these events happen less frequently and keep the lanes more open from a trade standpoint. I mean, I can remember, I think it was 2 years ago, that a lot of the major shipping lines rerouted their traffic away from the Somalian coast and ran it around to in another way, maybe through South America or whatever. That cost them a ton of extra money, right? And that price increase went directly to the customer and stuff, you know.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about Colorado. Obviously, this is where we are. So related to transportation logistics, what do you see happening in Colorado? It's always been a consumer market. So what's your take on supply chain logistics specific to Colorado in 2019?
I see, well, you can look out the window and see tons of
That's
cranes.
That's an easy question to answer, right?
Yeah, tons of growth, and they're even building in places that way past where your warehouse is. Nobody would have thought they would have done that. It's kind of amazing, and everywhere you see, you know, everybody putting up, you know, 500,000, 1 million square feet, and then, you know, they all need help. They all need drivers. I think the big constraint in all this is some of the things we've talked about is domestic trucking and the ability to service all these major facilities, the tax increases that we're probably going to have over the next few years, the amount of technology that's going to be required to run all that. So pretty much a lot of things we talk to is, does it make sense for Denver to be a geographic hub? We've got a $1.5 billion expansion going on at our airport there, yet there's very little cargo internationally that runs through there, just from the standpoint that we run it to Chicago and LA. So our constraints are that we are geographically landlocked. It'll be good to bring product in here to distribute out through the whole Rocky Mountain region, but we've been doing that for years. Yeah. It might be better as a consolidation hub from a global standpoint if we could figure out how to get product to come in here a lot less expensive, because it's a ton. Yeah. It's a ton of money to bring stuff in from LA, Chicago, Houston, and wherever. Yeah. That increases the cost of the product.
Yeah, I could see that. Colorado being a a more cost-effective option for large-scale consolidations, kind of being a Tier 1 gateway city.
Absolutely.
So, I'll tell you what. Well, the rapid fire, I think, was a good option today. And like I said, there's no better person that could just go all over the board with our topic. So
appreciate that.
Thank you today. You've been a great storyteller. So and thank you for joining us today on the Connect and Collaborate Network.
Thank you for having me.
Featuring supply chain logistics, the storytellers, and of course it was brought to you by Cap Logistics here in Denver. So again, Henri, thanks again.
You bet.
Appreciate it.